All righty. Good morning, everybody. Hope everybody's having a good week and a good hump day thus far. I'm very excited for this because I've been seeing our guest photo, I should say photos, pop up on Facebook for quite a while because there's a well-known Vietnam photo page that shares numerous amounts of Vietnam photos. And Mr. Carter, our guest, Mr. Virgil Carter, has a lot of great photos from his time in service, and he's going to be here talking about his time in service. He was actually a captain with the Mike Force, and as you can tell, I messed up in the title, labeling him lieutenant. I'll have to fix that, but we're going to get to be hearing a lot of interesting stuff. Mike Force, which we don't get to hear about very often, but also some jump training and some interesting things that Mr. Virgil did while in country, such as working with numerous indigenous troops, not just the guards that we hear of, the Rade and such, but the Nungs and a group I'm not too familiar with, the Coho. But I'm going to hand it off to Mr. Virgil and let him get us started and let him introduce himself to you guys. So, Mr. Virgil, thank you for joining us, and the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Bud. Uh, as Bud said, uh, I was with the Mike Force. Uh, my tour was from late September '66 to late September '67 in ICOR. Uh, '66, many of you will remember, was the buildup period when American forces were growing and adding to their numbers throughout Vietnam, uh, and, uh, and special forces as well. Uh, Briefly, I served in three different assignments during my time in ICOR. Initially, I was assigned as the executive officer and acting CO of the ICOR Mike Force, Detachment A-113. And just about equal period, 4 to 5 months each. Uh, I then was reassigned out to an A camp on the two corps border up in the mountains, A-103 at Giova. And then the final assignment I had, uh, they apparently read my 201 file and found out that as a college student I majored in architecture. So they pulled me back into the C team, made me the C team engineer officer, and sent me up to the demilitarized zone to design and start construction of the new second camp, Special Forces second camp at Lang Vei on the Laotian border. Um, so briefly, that's an overview of my assignments. Uh, but I will kind of let you moderate, just to direct the conversation from there.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Fantastic. And speak of the devil, our resident Oklahoma boy is popped into the chat. Could you tell us a little bit about your upbringing? Did you have any family members that served? How did you come to want to serve your country?
Well, that's a good question. No, I didn't have any family members. Um, when I was a student at Oklahoma State University, I was in ROTC, and I had decided at that time I wanted to make the Army a career. So I enlisted as a private, or actually a PFC, in the Special Forces Reserve Unit that was stationed or had meetings in Stillwater, 12th Special Forces Group.
Wow.
They had groups in Stillwater and Tulsa that I attended meetings in, uh, and so that was my introduction to Special Forces as a PFC.
Wow. That so with you being and we've not had many reserve or National Guard units talk to us before. Some of the SOGmen ended up in the 20th. what was that like? Did you I mean, did you take the full on the training group course, the reserve tests and everything, and become S qualified at that point, or?
No, what they did, they just integrated me into the detachment that was in Stillwater and in Tulsa, and I went to a regular monthly meeting, trained with them, went to a 2-week summer camp in North Carolina. We spent most of our time there out in the Uwharrie National Forest operating against the 82nd. And I did that. I was in the 12th group uh, until graduating in college, uh, taking a regular Army commission. I was a distinguished military graduate from ROTC. I was
Wow.
offered a regular Army commission and accepted that because career was my intention. Uh, and so they just integrated me in, and I just learned kind of OJT.
There's really no better training, as we've heard from some of the other special forces veterans. There's nothing like being with an experienced SF man and him taking you under your wing and teaching you in the field. That's pretty heavy duty. How old were you at this point when you received your commission?
Well, I have to think back and do some math in the back of my head. About 22, I guess.
I was about to say 21, 20. I mean, with you being ROTC and all of that, that's pretty young. That's heavy duty. Speaking of it being you being at near Oklahoma State and everything, we know much later in the Vietnam War that things got out of control, especially on the coast with the hippies and all of that. I'm sure there were protests, but nothing like on the coast. But was Vietnam in the news? Was it coming up much, or was it just bits and pieces here and there, or did you know about Vietnam fully since you had gotten in?
Back back in I graduated from college in '64, uh, and back in those days it was news, but it wasn't the public uh, unrest and rioting and so forth that took place in the 67, 68, 69 period.
Wow, it's amazing how it just I guess with all the buildup of not only the troops but the media really getting embedded with the troops and all of that really caused a ruckus and everything. Um, wow, that's amazing. So you're as you said you got your OJT going on with the 12th group. You received your commission. What is your next step in the either training or where are you going next after receiving your commission?
Uh, I went to infantry officer basic course at Benning, finished that, went to jump school, finished that, uh, and then they sent me to a mechanized infantry unit, the Fifth Infantry Division, mechanized at Fort Carson. Uh, while I was there as a lieutenant, unknown to my wife, I volunteered twice for Vietnam, and each time the woman at the Pentagon that handled officer assignments said, "Son, just take it easy. You need to get some experience. We'll hold on to your uh, request for transfer, and you just continue to march." Uh, I went to jungle warfare training in Panama,
Oh,
uh, and as a senior first lieutenant, it was about time for reassignment. I'd been at Carson for oh, a year and a half, almost 2 years, I guess. And I contacted the Pentagon again, uh, and the woman said, "Oh, I'm safe from here, D-214, that you were in Special Forces. How would you like a Special Forces assignment in Vietnam?" I said, "Great. And the next thing I knew, I was in ICO.
Wow. So what with jungle training in Panama was this the Army run jungle school, the Air Force jungle, what jungle school was this?
It was the Army Jungle School. I don't know if there was an Air Force at that time. I hadn't heard of that. But they had classes that they ran through the jungle warfare school just nonstop.
Wow. Was looking back after you had some time in Vietnam, did the jungle school do you pretty well? Did you learn a few things to help you out?
Well, it was helpful. Uh, it was more about individual uh, conduct, individual living in a jungle environment. It didn't get into tactics or any of that sort of thing, either U.S. tactics or NVA tactics. It was more of an individual kind of survival and what you do, how you live in a jungle environment.
Wow. And you mentioned you're straight on to I-Corps. Are you going in? Have you already gotten fifth group orders? Or are you going to go in there and check in at Nha Trang, or what's the process when you get to Vietnam?
Yes, I had orders to go to fifth group. Arrived in Saigon, stayed at the B team safe house in Saigon for 2 days, waiting for transportation to Nha Trang, fifth group headquarters. Uh, there, they assigned me to I Corps, and I went by air up to Da Nang. There, I was assigned to the Mike Force as the executive officer of A-113 and the acting CO. A-113 and the Mike Force was an interesting and kind of a unique team because it was a joint Australian and U.S. team. Half the team was Australian and half the team was American. Some of my best friends to this day are some of those Aussie team members.
I think I might have a picture of one of your buddies, and well, two of your buddies. Uh, Gosh, I'm blanking on his name. I think he passed away. Jeez Louise. There's another photo of him in a boat. Why am I blanking on this gentleman's name?
Well,
Slat or
I can't tell the fella in the beret, and I just don't recognize the fella in the Aussie hat turned up on his side.
I had
Friend of mine was Barry from Australia.
Warrant Officer 2, Barry Rust in the beret, and Warrant Officer 2, Bruce Prosper, receiving their wings upon completion of Mike Force Airborne training.
Both great soldiers and great friends.
Yes, sir. And we always have questions. There will be some coming up more. There's already been one come up about Australians working with Americans and especially special forces. But were the men that were with y'all, were they I don't even know if the term if all encompassing SAS, or were they Australian SF, or what were they what were their units?
They were a combination of SAS and commando.
Wow. Okay, that was the next question. I've got a great photo of you and Mr. Barry Russ. No, that's not who I was looking for. I've got a lot of great photos. Y'all have to bear with me here. Here was a question. AATTV, did you see any SAS advisors while you were there, which he kind of just spoke about working with SAS? What was is that the Australian advisory?
Australian Advisor Training Team Vietnam.
There we go. Okay. The the abbreviations still kick my tail, always trying to figure out. So when you first get in, I mean, you're sounding like you're stepping into a pretty big shoes to fill and thing to come over. Not only you're working with special forces, but you've got, as we see now, Aussies in the mix. What is your first task when you get settled in, everything? What's the first thing that's on the list to do when you get in camp?
Well, you're exactly right. The, my, my job was to try to start running and catching up because the normal flow of things were taking place. I had to catch up with those. We were conducting combat operations. We were also moving. The C team commander had decided that he wanted to relocate the Mike Force camp from one side of the C team compound next to the Marine and the MACV-SOG air base to the opposite side of the C team compound, which was there was nothing south of us except Vietnam. And so he wanted to put us over there, and we had to conduct combat operations while we were moving and building a new camp. And then he said, "Well, boys, I want you to also build fortifications all along the perimeter of the C-team compound." So we were doing several different things at one time, and as you can imagine, it was everyone was busy, and there was no shortage of things to do.
Jeez, I think this is a set of photos where
That's one
y'all.
of my photos. Those are both my photos.
Yes, yes, sir. Thank you for letting us share, because people, we love photos here.
There's the team compound, and on the far left margin there is the new Mike Force headquarters and perimeter.
Wow, that I mean, it looked like y'all were right here. That's
There.
Marble Mountain. It looked like y'all were in a good area right here. Is this the new compound that y'all had built where y'all had just moved from?
That's the interim. That's the interim compound, the 10th, that served us as temporary quarters from the old camp on one side of the C-team compound to the opposite side as we were building. And we're looking south, and that's the Marble Mountain, which is VC territory and NPA territory to the south of it.
Now, in '68, as you know, SOG was having their issues. I'll minimize this. These are great photos we'll talk about. Did you, were there any SOG assets in that area over there that y'all knew about, or did you know SOG was over there? Did y'all pretty much keep to yourself since the Marine base was in between you guys and whatever else was over there?
No, in '66 and I think '67, there was nothing there. SOG wasn't there yet.
Okay.
SOG moved to a new compound just north of Marble Mountain. I think maybe in either '67 or '68, and it was maybe '68 that their camp was attacked and overrun there.
Mm-hmm. Jeez Louise. That so let me try and get my stuff straight again. So the company that ended up moving, that was A-113, or was that A-100 already?
Well, at that time it was A-113.
Okay.
As we were there on the new camp, the orders came down from 5th Group and the Trang that each C team was to create a new mobile guerrilla force. and that group was actually pulled from the Mike Force, as well as from some of the team members from other A teams throughout I-Corps.
Wow. Okay, that is very, very interesting. I think I've got a photo because we do have some questions coming in. But I wanted to show this another great photo of yours. A-113 preparing to depart to SF Camp Bateau, late '66. Warrant Officer Melvin Sharples, John Stone, later KIA on A-100 op. First Lieutenant Virgil Carter, and Warrant Officer Keith Winbank. Second photo shows y'all inbound to the new camp. Wow, that's you've got some great photos. I mean, geez Louise, I'm gonna spend all day going through them, but and some of them will match up with some of the questions we've got coming up. But let's see here. That's getting a little deeper into it first. What was when you first get in and y'all are moving, how long before you guys start shall we say prepping for combat operations or getting ready to go out to get intel or what needs to be done?
Well, we were constantly training troops. We had, as you mentioned earlier, we had 3 companies of indigenous troops. We had 2 Montagnard companies, one company from the Rade tribe, and one company from the Coho tribe. There's a training video of the Coho company, and you can see Officer Tony Seegers there explaining to the interpreter, who then explains in Coho to the Coho troops. So there was constant training process going on day in and day out, as well as camp construction.
Wow. And could you since we've mentioned them here, could you tell us a little bit about the Coho? I don't know if I've ever heard of the Coho tribe before.
Well, yes, good question. There are something like 30 to 35 different Montagnard tribes in the I-Corps, II-Corps area. They are each different and distinct. They have their own language and their own religion, but they all probably speak Vietnamese as well. And the Cohos and the Rade both were tribes that lived in the II-Corps area. And it's kind of an interesting story. My very rough was sent down to II-Corps to recruit. I can't say it.
Tongue twister this
morning. Troops for the I-Corps Mike Force. And so he recruited these 2 companies. He got caught doing it by the MACV man people, the Army people at MACV, who almost threw him in jail for coming down there and recruiting out of II-Corps. They basically told him to get his butt back up to I-Corps and never come back, or he would go to jail. So we got two companies out of II-Corps, along with the Nun company out of Saigon.
Jeez, that's and with this is still early on. Well, yeah, pretty early on. And we've heard from the later guys that that worked with the Nungs. You know, they were getting few in number because they were used at such an early time like this. But we've always heard, other than some of the yards, that the men that served with the Nung said they were probably the best fighting group that they ever served with. Did you have I know it's hard to pick, but did you have a favorite group to work with in combat?
I really liked Rade. They were very warrior-like. Cohos were also very good. And the nuns were terrific.
That's the I believe I forgot who had a Rod 18, but that's exactly what he mentioned. He said they were old school still and still warriors. That some of the ones that he ended up getting for his team when they came in, they were still in loincloths and all of that, like straight out of the field where they had been hunting and stuff. I always found that to be so interesting, that literally taking them out of primitive culture, and here y'all have got a group of Rod A doing BAR training and everything like that. I mean, that's just amazing, and a testament to y'all's skills as force multipliers.
Well, that's very true of the Rade. They were warriors through and through. Uh, Unfortunately, not all of the tribes were good and dependable. Later, when we talk about Lang Vei, if we do,
Mm-hmm.
the Montagnards up along the DMZ, the Brew, were not good soldiers. In fact, they tended to be some of them were turncoats. We talk about Lang Vei, A-101. They were overrun 3 times in 3 different camps, staffed with these soldiers. And I know for a fact that on two of the times they were overrun with some of the Peru Montagnards opening the gate
Mm-hmm.
in
Mm-hmm.
the camp.
In 68, I know for a fact because we've had a gentleman on from SOG that was the rescue force sent in, and they spoke to the survivors. I believe 2 Americans. One was walking dead. If you've ever heard that term, he was literally dead, but was still talking coherently. He said that the the guards in the gate opened the gate, let the NVA in, and then started pointing out the key locations. And they actually began executing Americans and Montagnards with their hands behind their backs. And he got a bullet in the head, somehow lived to tell a tale to let them know that it was an inside job, full on.
That's very true. That was into the first camp at Lang Vei, and they killed the team leader, the team expo, and seriously wounded the team sergeant who had to be medevaced to Japan.
Yes, sir. It was so there's a good book, and I can't even think of it, Night of the Silver Stars, and I think a book called Route 9, if I'm not mistaken, on Lang Vei. I recommend both of those. Uh, Two great books. Two great books.
Of the camp. That's the second camp. That's where the NVA used 6 or 7 PT-76 tanks. First use of tanks in Vietnam by the NVA, and overran the camp with tanks.
And it's mentioned in the book, and we heard from some of the guys that got in on the ground that it was shocking to see how many of the laws were defective and weren't working. They had to learn where to shoot them because some of them were hitting and coming off, but they said they were surprised to see the stack of laws in one of the corners of the abandoned bunker that wouldn't fire for whatever reason, defective, something wrong with the mechanism. But yeah, there's some of the tanks right there that they managed to get out because they did manage to knock a few of them out.
They knocked out at least one, maybe two, with the 106 recoilless rifle.
Yes, sir.
But then, of course, the 106, when it fires, has a tremendous
signature
backblast, fiery backblast that gives away its position. Mm-hmm. And they were then knocked out by remaining tanks. So the only thing they had left to use against the tanks were the laws, and they simply either refused to fire or bounced off.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I can't even think of what those guys were going through. Oh, one of our viewers said they believe the laws were actually damaged in the airdrop that messed them up when they hit too hard on the ground. So that would actually make a lot of sense. I knew they were defective in some shape or form or fashion, and that would make a lot of sense. Geez, what I mean, since we're going to be kind of going all over the place since we're bringing up interesting subjects here, but we've got the photo of you rebuilding the camp. Since we're talking about it, could you speak a little bit about what that was like, or what all entailed building the camp?
Yes. There's a photo of the foundation of the TOC, the Tactical Operations Center, that was under construction by the Seabees. Seabees did a terrific job building the camp. My experience with Seabees, I call wherever I had contact with them, was just top notch. They were great. They were dependable. They were skilled. They just did a terrific job. Nothing was too tough or too difficult for them. But that's the top under construction, and you should have a couple of areas of the camp as it was being constructed too. Bud, do you have those?
I believe I do. Let me try and find. I hope this is it, and not Quezon. I think this might be the one. Is that the overhead of Lang Vei?
That's the camp as it's being constructed. That probably was taken, I'm going to say, in maybe June or July of '66.
Wow.
And you can see, you're looking, actually, the view from the helicopter is looking sort of westerly. The camp, that road you see, that dirt road, where the construction is all taking place, that's running about due east-west, with west at the top of the screen. That more improved curvilinear road is Route 9 that ran from the coast to Laos. And the camp, as you see it, is about 1 mile east of the Laotian border.
Good God. I did not. I knew it was close. I didn't realize it was that close. I saw how not only from the DMZ, I mean, it's a distance, but how close it is to the DMZ and Laos is.
The DMZ is off to the right of the screen, maybe 2 miles.
God.
So that the camp was right at the corner of the DMZ and the ocean border. It was the outlet.
Jeez Louise. With it being this close in Indian territory, so to speak, how much time did you and the CBs work on this?
Well, the camp started construction, I'm going to say about May or June of '66. This is a month or two, well, more than a month, maybe a couple of months after it started. And it finished, well, actually, it was still under some construction in the Battle for Tet '68 place in February '68.
Holy cow. I was always curious because you can't just throw up an A camp in, a couple months, especially, in this territory when you're fortifying and building concrete tots and all of that. That is, wow. It's always interesting to hear that. We always speak to guys that are in combat or at these base camps, but we've never really spoken to anybody that helped build up an actual A camp like that. That's very, very interesting.
Well, it was a tough and challenging time for the team A-101 because they had to conduct combat operations. They had to do camp defense, and they had to do camp construction. It was a challenging time at the very best, very least.
Yeah.
And A-101 had an interesting history, which we can go into a little later. The A-101 team was was a team that really had some challenging karma.
Wow. I just wrote that down for us to bring up a little bit. People are kind of curious now, getting into a little bit of a typical day of not typical day when you're building and everything, but once y'all are at the camp and doing combat operations, what's a typical day for you getting ready for a mission, or the day before getting ready for a mission? What all entails in that?
Well, as far as the Mike Force is concerned, there tended to be two sorts of situations that we would have to face and deal with. Uh, one was we knew we were going to go out on a mission somewhere. We had a little bit of advanced warning, and so we could do some training for it. The other condition was uh, we got an hour's warning that there was a condition at one of the A camps that was taking place, and we needed to get ready, load out, and be prepared to move in the next hour or so. So, it would depend on combat application would depend on which of those two conditions we were facing. And as the camp at Lang Vei, we were building a camp and also conducting training at the same time.
Wow, that's and speaking of training, before we get in, because I think this is going to be an interesting part, and we've got photos for the interesting part. Could you talk about some of the training? We have shown off a little bit about some of the guys with the BARs. I've got a recoilless rifle picture here, but could you tell us a little bit about the training that goes into it, not just for the weapons, but are y'all working on IA drills or specialty things for the operation?
Absolutely. Um, there were an emphasis as much on individual weapon skill. This is the Mike Force at my camp at Giova, A-113, down on the two-corps border. And you get a sense of the terrain. You see the mountains in the background. Those were the mountains all around us in which we operated. That's what made two-corps what it was. It was a narrow coastal plain and then nothing but mountains, mountains, mountains. This is a Mike Force arrived from Da Nang and getting ready to launch from the 8th up in the mountains there on the operation. And that was a typical kind of Mike Force operation, load out in a couple of CH-46 or CH-47 helicopters, at least one company, and out we would go.
How many there's gonna be several questions on this, and I think some in the viewers. How many men for the company sized operation, how many men entailing either Aussies, Americans, and then Indige overall? How many of you guys?
My Force operations were typically one company. And that would be the Rade company, the Coho, or the Nung company. The numbers vary a little bit, but somewhere in the vicinity of 100 plus or minus troops.
Wow, that's a why I'm always interested reading the blackjack books and all of that, because once the Mike Force is called in, they're the cavalry's coming, so to speak. Would we've got some photos of some jump training, and I've heard from the Force Recon guys, they had some in-country jumps. Of course, SOG had the special parachute school that they had set up at Long Time. Could you tell us a little bit about what entailed for the Mike Force to do their jumps?
Right. Um, this is another order that came down from 5th Group into Trang that all Mike Force units were to be airborne qualified. So each Mike Force unit in the 4 corps and the 5th Mike Force unit in the train, each organized and conducted their own jump school. And in Da Nang, you've got some pictures there, Bud, from the I-Corps Mike Force, I know. While you're looking for those, we ran a typical airborne qualification school that lasted about 4 weeks. There we go. And then jumped each of the companies, each of our 3 companies at the time. This was in January 67. Jumped each of our 3 companies and qualified the troops as airborne. Each jumped 5 times. And this is funny. The Montagnards and the nuns, small stature people, they weigh a lot. And some of them, they would literally jump, and they would, instead of coming down, they would sort of float for a while up there. Particularly if there was a strong breeze, they would kind of float up there and eventually come down. It was funny actually to watch. We got a lot of laughs watching some of them come down, and they loved it. They just loved it.
That's amazing. We've heard from some of the SOG guys that they loved it, and then some of them that got chose to do the first combat halo jump. I've spoken to their team leader, well, both of them, both at CCS and then the one on the SOG halo jump, and they were like, "You mean we're jumping higher than normal?" He's like, "Oh yeah, we're going up several thousand feet," and they were like, "Oh wow, this is going to be a lot." You could tell they were worried, but they didn't hesitate for a moment. They took to it like duck to water, they said.
They're good soldiers. Good.
Absolutely. Soldiers. Absolutely. I believe this is Mr. Gosh, we mentioned him earlier, but getting his wings, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, the Montagnard soldier with his back to the camera is getting his wings, and I think the Australian soldier is also getting wings. I can't tell from the photo. It's not clear enough for me to recognize who it is. It is Australian.
Yes, sir. I wish I could. I'll end up finding his name here in a moment. Here is a little info you had on one of your posters. Guys, I'll share the link to the Mike Force page I'm using to get information because it is outstanding. And like Mr. Virgil said, 5th Group ordered all Mike Force units to be qualified. In I-Corps, we ran a jump school in 67 for the I-Corps Mike Force. Some of the guys were so little and so light, they just seemed to float. We used the CT Huey for the jump. That was actually going to be one of my questions was, were y'all just jumping out of Hueys or fixed wing aircraft?
Yeah, it was Hueys. It's strictly special forces operation, and we didn't have any aircraft other than helicopters that were assigned to us and that we could use.
Wow. And that actually comes to a great question, or again, all over the place, but it's great here. Jason, you've got a few, but let me get to your first one about helicopter support. Did either A-100 or A-113 have a support helicopter, like an attack helicopter squadron supporting them, or did y'all have help, or just have to call whoever would come support y'all?
As far as my experience, knowledge is concerned, we had to call for air support, and we would get whatever was able to be diverted from either standby or another mission. We Special Forces did not have any aircraft assigned to them, and only a few helicopters.
That's it's always so strange how units, especially you think the Mike Force. I think some of them might have had a semi-assigned support, but you would think you guys doing what y'all are doing, they'd at least get y'all a few birds permanently opcon, shall we say, to you guys. That's always been strange to me.
Well, I think I don't know that much about the organization SOG and Delta, Omega, Sigma, but my impression is they did have assigned aircraft and so forth. But the Special Forces, Mike forces, uh, and the mobile guerrilla forces and the normal ACAM did not.
Wow, wow. Um, Good Lord, have my, oh, here we are. Nick Kane had a good one. We were talking about air. How well did they take for the airborne, meaning the indige, how well did they take the airborne air assault training that the Mike Force went through?
They were great. The I Corps, where I have experience and knowledge, they loved it. The troops really loved it. And it was the greatest kind of thrill ever experienced. And uh, they performed well. They trained well. Uh, they jumped, and then they ran around in little circles, clapping each other on the back. They just had a wonderful time.
I love that. I love that. Did any of you, I mean, all of y'all are special forces qualified, so I don't see how it would happen, but by any weird chance, did was this the first time jumping for any of the Americans, or was everybody previously jump qualified, shall we say?
So everybody, all the U.S. troops and some of the Australians were already jump qualified, but we all jumped. I mean, you get a chance to jump, you jump.
Yeah, I was about to say, especially with you guys in country, it seemed like y'all were definitely those that I should say jumped were doing all they could to jump. We talked to the guys that were at 1-0 school, and on days off from not doing the classes, they'd see if they could go get a jump in just to do it. It's
Absolutely.
that's always funny with you guys jumping out of perfectly good airplanes.
No, there are no perfectly good airplanes, but we jump anyway.
Yeah. um. Okay, we again have gone a little over the place here. I did have just find a great photo of you and some of the guys from gosh, was this is from 67 A-103, I believe. Let me bring that up. And then there's a few questions on some combat stuff that we can get into. Again, guys, right here while it's up,
Yeah.
the I-Corps Mike Force history page. I'll share it in the show notes as well. But here's a photo of Mr. Virgil with Team A-103 in April of 67. Um, you know what? Now that I see a person named Phil Brown, would you happen to know if his nickname was Phil Scarface Brown?
I don't know that nickname. Phil Brown was our radio specialist, senior radio specialist, and he was a good soldier and really knew radio and communication.
I'm wondering if that there's a lot of Phil Browns, but there was a Phil Brown that went on to SOG to serve at Khartoum, and just curious about that.
Uh,
Great photo here. Howitzer H&I missions. I'm sure we can get a question out of that, but we've got enough building up at the moment. To start us off on the combat questions and such, folks were curious about. We already saw some BARs, some M16s in the mix. What were the Americans' choice of weapons? And another one was, were the Aussies carrying their L1A1, or were they using American weapons like you guys?
um, we had choices, but the answer to the question about the Aussies is they, for at least in I Corps, they carried American weapons. But I had an M16, an M2 automatic carbine, and an AK-47 and a 45 pistol. So you know, you kind of have your choice of what you want to carry. But the one thing that I never carried that a lot of people did, and I wish I could have gotten my hands on, was a Car 15.
Yes, yes, sir. Where I know the Air Force had them very, very early on. Did you see any in country while you were in country?
Air Force?
No, not Air Force, but Car 15s.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Most of the Mike forces and special troops carried them. Later, maybe they became more common and available. And
Yes.
just a minute, let me shut the door for my dog.
It's fine. Don't worry about it. Great questions, guys. Great questions. And we still got some good photos to go through. In fact, heck, we might have to end up doing a part 2 because we got a lot of good questions. I mean, photos.
No, sorry, bud. She's a good watchdog, and she saw, I don't know, something or someone.
Don't apologize. I've always got my dogs, cats coming around, so no, we're used to pets.
Car 15s were we were discussing, and they became more commonly available maybe late '67 and on. And by that time, I was about ready to deroad.
Yeah. Wow. So, did you say any of the guys on your team, did they happen to come trade for one or get their hands on one that you saw firsthand?
No one in I Corps or on my HF team had a Car 15. Never saw one.
Wow, that's wild. And yeah, we've heard from Marines and SOGmen alike. You know, they started getting them in 68-ish, 69 full on and ready to go. But I saw somewhere on a post, I think 67, early 68, they already had a Car 15 and I think a 30-round magazine. I was like,
Right.
good Lord, the SF guys could have used that to great effect instead of guarding the air bases with that thing. But to each their own. How did you like the M16? We got guys that got the early batches and complained and never used another one again. Did you enjoy the 16?
I thought the 16 was okay. It was good. It was lightweight. We only had 20-round magazines, but you know, you carried a bunch of them, and they performed well. Didn't have any trouble like the Marines did with jamming, and I don't have anything negative to say about them.
That's wonderful because I've got a book here. I believe the name of the book, guys, if you're curious, is called Swift Sword or Operation Swift Sword, and it's about the Marines getting that first batch of terrible M16s and then finding the boys slumped over trying to clean their rifles or whatever for where they had jammed up and the NBA had gotten them, unfortunately.
Right.
So glad to know you guys had some good weapons out there. What were the indigenous troopers using weapon wise? Were they using the BARs like we saw them training on, or
there was a transition that kind of took place in maybe very early '67 in I Corps. They in late '66 when I first got there, they were using basically U.S. Army World War II weapons.
wow,
That's why you saw the BAR, the M1 or M2 carbines, 57 millimeter recoilless rifles, which were seldom used because they're big and heavy and awkward. 60 mortars, M19, 19, 30 caliber machine guns, and started in maybe early first quarter '67, they began switching over to the same weapons that the U.S. troops used: M16, M60s, M79, that sort of thing.
wow. I hate to interrupt the flow of this, but I just found a photo of you with a SOG legend, and I've got to bring it up real quick. I've got a question picked out, but we've got to show this photo. You with Mr. Billy Greenwood, absolute Project Delta and SOG legend. This is
Yeah,
A-103 in January of '67.
yeah.
That's
That's
great.
late '67, and it's a transition of two teams. There's the existing team at Geova is transitioning out, and the new team is transitioning in. Uh, Billy was new team sergeant coming, but he didn't stay very long. He went up back to Danang and uh, became uh, key in the new Sigma.
Yes. Yes. Wow. Okay. So you didn't have very much interaction with him at all then?
Well, I knew Billy very well, uh,
Oh,
both at 103 and then back in Da Nang. I really had a lot of admiration and respect for Billy. He was a top-notch soldier.
that's I've read books and then finally got to speak to some SOGmen that served with him both in either Project Delta or in SOG when he was the recon first sergeant when Mr. Bob Howard was getting his Medal of Honor, and said he was just outstanding, cared for his men, and had more experience than you could get in a lifetime of what to do in the bush. So great things.
Yeah, he was a classic special forces soldier.
Oh yes, fairly short, rugged, and rough as a pine knot.
Yeah.
Um, Daniel was curious as we're getting into some good questions by the viewers. Um, could you describe your first combat experience in Vietnam?
Uh, yeah, I can. I think maybe most of us probably always remember that. Um, this was one of those be prepared to load out and move out in an hour kind of operation. We went out to the Special Forces camp at Trabal. We were sent out to find uh, two Special Forces soldiers who had been abandoned by their CIDP troops during an operation. And just maybe a month or two before that, the Special Forces team leader, captain, and another Special Forces team member uh, and their CIDP uh, patrol had been ambushed on the outskirts of Trabal in 6 or 7 foot high elephant grass that ran alongside a river. The VC or NVA jumped out with a machete and cut off their head,
God,
and so it was a tough place, and the troops the Montagnard troops there were really spooked after that particular operation. When you have a company of DC or NVA jumping out with machetes, whacking at people, I mean, it was that close of a contact. And so they sent us out to find these two Americans. We spent probably 4 or 5 days going through the mountains looking for them, and we couldn't find them. We found several villages that were VC sympathetic, weapons and equipment stored that we destroyed. Uh, we came back into the camp at the mall, uh, and the two soldiers, two SS soldiers, came back into the camp. They had been escaping and raiding on their own. And the good news was they came back safe and got back to the camp. Uh, and we then rotated out back to Da Nang.
Oh, I mean, that is the craziest thing. I mean, I've heard some crazy stuff, but them on the trail whacking and using machetes, that is that's one of the crazier things I've heard. Was that? I mean, was that the first time or the last time you saw that or heard of that going on?
I had I had never heard of it until I got to Trebon, and it spooked everybody because Trebon was oriented on a river. It was on the south side of a large river that ran east-west, and alongside the river, it was relatively flat lands, but was covered with thick, almost penetrable elephant grass that was 6 or 7 feet high. You couldn't see more than a couple of feet as you went through there, and so it was a pucker factor kind of situation, uh, which is probably why the Montagnard troops from Trebon probably got spooked in a contact and just split and ran, which is not uncommon for SF troops all over my corps, and left the two SF soldiers to, you know, try to make it on their own.
Jeez Louise, that's terrible. Them being left and running like that. We've unfortunately heard a few tales like that, and even it getting so bad, even the yards running off a few times, which it's bad when the Mon yards run. Um, uh, I've got There were some interesting photos about some operations that y'all did. Let me pull up one here, and then it involves some sampan because I know there's a great photo of you with I think the Australian gentleman in a sampan. But I was curious about this one. This one looks like y'all are out on a patrol on a mountaintop. And it looks like a lot of Americans out there. Was this a Mike Force Patrol at A-113?
Yeah, that's on the right is these are all Australian. On
Oh,
the right is Tony Siggers, now deceased. On the left is my buddy. I think it looks like uh, uh,
Bruce.
yeah. Uh, and I'm trying to look in the background. Uh, I can't. Oh no, that's not Barry Rush. I thought it was Barry Rush. It's not. It's another Australian. His name's escaping me at the moment. He was killed. He went to the Mobile Guerrilla Force and was killed in the Mobile Guerrilla operation. Um, but that's out on the mountainside, typical mountain uh, kind of operation, out in the few clearings that you have that aren't either triple canopy or elephant grass. There's actually a little bit of a clearing, but you get an idea by the slope of the terrain. It's clearly an uphill kind of place.
Oh, wow. And I mean, we hear stories of, and that's why the everybody gives the Mike Force such respect because I mean, y'all are out there slugging it in terrible weather. And that'll come to one of the questions also. Do y'all, when it starts raining, gets bad weather and everything, do y'all just stop moving and call it a day, or do y'all keep humping throughout all the bad weather and all that?
Can you Bud, pull up that photograph that you had earlier of the operation at Bateau?
Um, which one might that have been?
There's an
The
aerial photo of the Bateau camp in the mountain region where it was the December '66,
with the
middle of the
smoke and
monsoon.
yes, sir. Let me find where I put that. Come on now.
The monsoon season, while you're looking at it, the monsoon season came down from the north, uh, traveled down the Vietnam, starting in Icor and ultimately winding up in Fort. In Icor, the monsoon was typically beginning in maybe November and would last until maybe February, uh, and it would rain during the monsoon season every day and every night, and you would freeze at night because you were soaked. Uh, you think of Vietnam being not being cold and being kind of humid, and it was in the summertime when the monsoon was on. But when the monsoon was on in the mountains, you would freeze at night. It was very cold, and we were very wet.
I don't know where in.
Well, I'll tell you the story while you're still looking for that. It's an interesting kind of a story. This is one of the kinds of operations where we uh, knew ahead of time, a day or so, about the mission, and so we could prepare for it and train for it for a little bit. We were sent out as a Mike Force company to locate and engage a reported NVA regimental headquarters uh, that was in the mountains uh, in the vicinity of the Special Forces camp at Bateau, which was down in the southern mountain part close to Tucor. Uh, so we loaded out in two Marine Corps CH-46 helicopters uh, from Da Nang to fly south down to the Bateau camp, disembark, and then launch early the next morning. As the leader, I was in the second helicopter to make sure that everybody was out ahead of us, and that by the time I landed, the other folks would be there. Well, when we did finally land at Bateau Forces Camp, we found out that the monsoon had been so heavy going that the helicopter aborted and turned around and went back to Da Nang. It could not land at Bateau. So we landed at Bateau with half a company and half our special forces team to conduct this operation out in the mountains looking for an NVA regimental headquarters. It rained like you just simply cannot imagine. Uh, we were up in the mountains, and every little gorge or every little depression in the mountain that was going downhill was full of white water surging down the mountain. It was incredible. We almost lost several of the small Montagnard troops with their heavy rucksack and gear just because of the unrushing of actual white water going down the gorge. We had to string rope across so that everyone could hold on and get safely across during the surging water. We were out for about 5 days, which is about as long as we could stay out without air resupply, and did not find the regimental headquarters and turned around to come back to the camp. As we turned around and started coming back to the camp, the Montagnard group actually started running, and they ran all the way down the mountains and all the way back to the Special Forces camp. I've never seen this before or since. They were so glad to get out of those mountains. It was so rugged and tough. they literally ran to get out of and get back to the Special Forces camp. We reported back by radio that we had not found the Special Forces, had not found the NVA regimental headquarters. Colonel C-Team commander, said he wanted us to go back out and look for them again, to resupply us and want to send us out. I said, I don't think they're going to go, Colonel, but I'll go talk with them and we'll get ready. I went and talked to the Montagnard company commander, and he said, we're not going. We don't go. I said, we've got to go. He said, we no go. I said, all right, well, we Americans and Aussies will go by ourselves. So I went back and got on the radio and told them they won't go. They're worn out. The weather is abominable. They will not move, but we will go. The round eyes will go. And he, no, stay put. We'll send aircraft out and we'll pick you up. And that's how the operation ended. It was a testament to the weather and the terrain and trying to conduct operations in the mountains during monsoon season.
That, I mean, I don't, I mean, first of all, you know, I mean, it's bad enough doing what y'all are doing in quote unquote good Vietnamese weather, and then y'all got all this. It's a wonder y'all were able to do as much as y'all did and be as successful as y'all were. I mean, it's bad enough the NVA VC's after y'all. Y'all got everything in the jungle itself, and then the weather fighting y'all. I mean, God. Speaking of that, did y'all have a
unbelievable operation in a lot of ways?
It sounds like it. Did y'all have a quote unquote weatherman, or did y'all get reports in and would go by off Army wide weather reports if it was going to be a bad day, or would y'all just step outside and look and be like, we're going today?
No, the weather never played any part that I ever knew about that in our operational orders. We weren't told what the weather was, and as far as we were, we didn't know what the weather was.
That is some hardcore stuff right there. This is actually a good question to lead into the rest of them here. What kind of missions were most common for your unit? The search and destroy, quick reaction, or some other type of special mission that came up?
We did a bunch of different types of missions. We went for search and rescue, like I described about looking for the two SF team members at Trebon. We went on, like Bateau I just described, a search and destroy mission. I didn't go, but later sent a special forces company up to Lang Vei as a camp reinforcement mission before the tanks rolled in. We were essentially a reaction force designed to react to almost any kind of situation that would come up involving special forces in NICOR.
Wow. And that's it's always interesting learning about the Mike Force and all of that, because that's pretty much how Jerry Shriver actually ended up in SOG. They Omega needed a quick reaction force that they didn't have quite enough men for, and they opconned a bunch of men from A-503, or I think A-503, and that was technically the Mike Force of SOG, but it ended up becoming a hatchet force, which is very interesting. And you guys, I mean, I've read The Siege of Play Me and Doc Peck, I think Doc Toe, or maybe Doc Siang. I mean, y'all have been sent into numerous heavy operations to try and retake camps and run off the bad guys. If y'all have not read any books on the MGF or Mike Force guys, there are some great books out there that y'all need to read about these guys. They're a jack
really
of all
true.
trades.
I think it may have been the top pick operation where Dr. Pick Camp was being attacked by the NBA, and one of the two core Mike Forces actually had a full Mike Force parachute drop to reinforce the Dr. Pick Camp. So that was unusual. There weren't any airborne operations by special forces in Vietnam, but that was one that was very large.
Speaking of actual combat jumps, guys, I'm about to get to your question, but he brought up something I was curious about. Did you happen to know Mr. Ludwig Fastenhammer, the Mike Force, when he did the jump in '67?
I didn't know him personally, but I know people that were good friends that did know him and served with him. He was sort of a legend.
Yes, sir. I mean, one of the characters on the Green Berets Robin Moore's book is based on him. He's
Right.
sounded like he was quite the guy. We've interviewed a few vets that worked with or for him in some shape, form, or fashion. Interesting man.
Yeah.
I actually think he's still alive. Someone told me he's pushing 100 now. I need to look into that, but if he is, that's amazing.
He would have some great stories if you could contact him.
Ain't that the truth? Ain't that the truth? We kind of covered a little bit about this, but I do have some photos of rivers that would verge into the next question. But Daniel was curious, what kind of terrain posed the biggest challenges for your team during an op?
Well, it's a very good question, and the answer is very simple: mountains. You don't think of Vietnam having mountains.
No.
Tri Corps and Two Corps were 95% mountains, and I would say maybe 90% of the mountains were covered in 90 to 100 foot high triple canopy jungle. So you're going uphill or downhill in jungle, and that's Trabal. Getting ready to go back to Da Nang from Trabal, looking for the two SFP members. But
those are some mountains right there, for instance.
That's a good example of where you go up and down those things, and you are lucky if when you're in triple canopy, you might be able to see 50 feet or 70 feet if you're lucky, but you don't know what's really in front of you, beside you, or behind you. And fortunately, the Montagnard troops are used. The ones we had grew up in mountainous region, and they were very good at operating in the mountains. They were very comfortable, and they were very good at reading signs and reading track. So they could pick up whether someone had, other troops had been in the area we were traversing. They really could pick up signs that we in the Aussies would miss.
Wow, that is one thing we love hearing about the indig whatever tribe or ethnicity helping you guys out, and it's they literally are one with their land. I mean, it's the smell, the hearing, the sight. I mean, they nothing gets past them. Just like y'all trying not to smoke or not taking showers and bathing with American soaps and stuff, because that smell, if to any experienced tracker, just immediately goes to the jungle.
Yeah, it really was reassuring to have them as soldiers with us, because they could pick up things that we would never pick up.
Wow. While this is we're going through, this is talking about some lessons learned. Nick was curious, did you learn anything from your Aussie counterparts? And he was curious, how were they structured? I'm assuming structured while they were with you. Heard a lot of stories of Aussie advisors lumped into fifth group, hence why you'd see them in green berets with SAS flashes.
Uh, the the Aussies that were with us uh, were, for the most part, very experienced SAS and commando troops, individuals that had been and operated with Aussie SAS and commando units. So they were very experienced. They were very good soldiers, and they were very easy to work with uh, and to share the team with. Um, you would see the berets of either the SAS or the commando troops that had come from those units. Now, AATV had lots of other kinds of troops in country operating with the U.S. and operating as standalone as a unit. But with us, in ICOR at least, uh, we had very experienced uh, guys that that became very friends, and that we willingly shared with and learned from and help them learn. So it was a very good team relationship that I experienced.
Yes, sir. We've every time we've heard someone speak about working with the Aussies from the Mike Force or crossing paths with them in Long Ton or their AO, always had good things to say about them. As a matter of fact, one of the guys that worked with Mr. John Plaster, Mr. Al Grace, from MACV-SOG, he ended up getting close with a SAS gentleman who was down at 10 school. They could go through it, but couldn't go through some of the courses, and they ended up trading berets. And you can see he's got his Kiwi SAS beret on with John
Yeah.
Plaster, and he'd wear it whenever he could, and they traded it. So I thought that was pretty neat of them trading berets.
The Aussies and a lot of the U.S. soldiers included really developed really good friendships and very close friendships that we keep to this very day, stay in contact with.
That's amazing. There's another photo of it. There he is right there with it on. That's really cool. We love hearing about because we always hear about we get the Vietnam stories from all different sects of units, the Rangers, the long range patrol, Force Recon, the grunt units, the aviators. But it's always nice hearing about the other units, the other nations that help. The Rock Marines are coming to help out. The Aussies, the Kiwis. There were some Filipinos, but I think they were doing a lot of tech work, mechanic work, and construction work.
Right.
Were there any other nationalities, but besides the Kiwis, the Koreans, and the Aussies that helped us out or helped y'all out in the Vietnam War? I'm blanking.
Well, in I-4, there were a number of Filipinos that were doing, as you mentioned, uh, construction work and civil affairs kinds of things.
Excellent. Okay. I was very surprised at that because I started noticing guys that in some SOG photos when they were around Jeeps or around weapons in the armory, I was looking, I was like, they don't look like yards, and finally figured out that they were Filipino armorers or what have you. A lot of them were higher educated, but quit their job in the Philippines to come work for the U.S. government contracting and make a ton of money. So,
Right, right.
um, but really cool stories from some of them, from some of the SOG guys as well. Let's see here. We'll finish up with just the viewer questions because we've got some good viewer questions. Gosh, guys, there was one that I wanted to start with right here that was great. apologize about this. Jason, did we always SF? Did y'all have any good scrounging stories, or you personally, or someone around you? We love hearing about the tactical acquisition of jeeps, stakes, ammo, weapons.
Special forces are known to be rather good scroungers. And in my corps, at least when I was there, every team had at least one team member off-site somewhere scrounging something. It we just we found in the name, we found an orphaned ambulance. We found different kinds of weapons and ordnance just needed a home. We found a steak. We found American food. And I hesitate to say this, but we actually found pallets of Filipino beer.
Oh,
And other varieties.
very nice.
This is not for normal public publication, but the answer to your question is yes.
Everybody's that's why they had Peterson in the Green Berets. You got to have a scrounger in the group, and I think that's become since I know since I've started doing this and learning about SF and scrounging that it's become a great source of questions on here, that we've gotten some really great stories of guys scrounging, some guys getting in trouble, others really getting away with it clean. I mean, people stealing seafood from colonels and stuff in Saigon to miniguns. It's you guys definitely had the skills to do it, and if y'all needed it, y'all got it taken care of. I love hearing about that stuff.
Well, that's the one way to put it. If we needed it, we got it, but not through normal channels. Interestingly, the A teams in I Corps at least never had any food furnished to them. We had to scrounge everything we ate and everything we drank. I don't know why, to this day, I don't know why special forces could exist as an organized unit and not have food and medical resupplies and so forth. We had to scrounge every one of those, and we did.
That is crazy. I mean, no food for the indigent medical support.
It's
I mean,
absolutely
God, thank God for y'all scrounging ability and acquiring ability, because that's maddening.
the Navy had a major resupply base in Da Nang at Monkey Mountain. And they were a wonderful source. They loved to get crossbows and battle flags that were all tattered and torn and maybe had some blood
Chicken
stains
blood.
on them. And interestingly, some SS boys made those things. And then we traded these battle souvenirs to the Navy, and we got steaks and all sorts of things for the Navy.
That is perfect, because literally Mr. Jim Morris was on not too long ago, and we're talking about how well the rear echelon guys enjoyed flags and stuff, and of course the SKSs and all that they trade. But he worked out a deal to where they started making their own. The Mama Son started making the NVA flags, and they'd wait till they were cooking chicken and would get chicken blood and put it in the right spot, shoot through it, and have a story ready, and they'd get whatever they needed when they went to Saigon and started trading. I love that.
Crossbows, Montagnard knife, handle, you name it, bracelet.
He got so good. He said he started taking a particular yard he took under his wing, and he trained him. He was like, if you really act like you don't want to get rid of it, that makes the American think that something special happened with it, or it really means something into the culture and everything. So they'll pay top dollar if you just act like you don't want to get rid of it a little bit. So he started acting a little bit and would, hold it close, and I'll give you $100 extra for it, and they just clean up and go to town and get everything the camp needed. You guys were something else.
There aren't many better scroungers than this.
No, sir, not at all. Another good question by Daniel. What weapons and equipment did you rely on in the field the most? Rely on most in the field?
Well, that's a good question. My forces and the operations conducted out of A camp essentially were light infantry units. Said differently, the weapons were those that essentially we could man carry in the mountain. And so while we would scrounge heavy weapons for the A camps, and there's some good stories about that, what we carried on operations was basically what we could carry for 5 days or longer on our back or in our home.
Wow. Did y'all have any we see the SOG guys having some variety of methods, either for their sleeves to tuck in, duct taping, or wearing leggings for leech protection. Did y'all do anything, or did y'all just rely on bug repellent and cigarettes to get leeches and such off you?
Well, what we did was we tuck our pants into our boots, and then we spray bug spray, bug juice all over the pants and the top of the boots. Do this thing on our fly and on our belts for our shirt work. But the leeches and the ticks and God knows what would still, you'd still get attached to them. But after a while, your clothes, if you have been out on a couple of operations, even though your clothes have been washed, the bug juice was so strong that it did help.
Wow, man, that's you guys going out there like that. It's amazing, that large group going out there just looking for trouble. It's always amazing. This question, there's actually going to be two. No one's put it in yet. I'm surprised it hasn't. But we see you guys wearing a variety of camouflage in the pictures and everything. Would the yards or the Nongs and the Americans and Aussies all go in tiger stripes, uniforms, so to speak, or did every man wear a different type uniform or camo that they liked, or what was the protocol for that?
Well, I'm sure it varied from unit to unit, but in the I-Corps Mike Force and in the A camp that I was in, we pretty much stuck to the tiger stripes. Both the Montagnard troops and the U.S. and Aussies. And the reason is simple. From a middle or far distance, you can't tell who's who. You can't tell U.S. or Montagnard. Now you get up within 50 feet, you can tell the difference in height. But that's it helps to have everybody pretty much the same.
Absolutely. Did you have a favorite camo, or did you just rely on the tiger stripe, wear them till they rotted off you, and get a new set?
Well, I pretty much used tiger stripes in the daytime. I carried a set of black pajamas that I used at night
Okay.
uh, for two reasons. One because black blends in better,
Mhm.
and two because I would carry them in my rucksack in a plastic sack and they'd be dry. And if I could, uh, if we were in territory where it was safe to stretch out a poncho liner to get under when it was raining, I would change into the black pajamas because they were dry and therefore were warm. And then in the morning early, at old dark 30, I'd get out of the black pajamas and back in the wet tiger suit.
Jeez Louise. That is smart though. At least you can get somewhat comfortable in some dry clothes and maybe get a little bit of wink and sleep a bit. Jeez.
I just
Uh,
can't describe for you how cold it could get in the monsoon season in those mountains. You would you would shiver. You could not possibly go to sleep.
I mean, I can imagine up on those mountains, like you said, not only with it being wet and how cold it gets in Vietnam, people don't realize that. But I mean, heck, just listen to the guys that get taken out on strings and all that. And if it's cold enough, some of them will come off, with icicles on them. I mean, it gets, that's what people don't understand. It gets cold at night in Vietnam. And if you're wet like these guys, yeah,
Yeah,
a
you
lot of
know.
guys got sick. The yards would constantly stay sick. I hear.
Yeah, yeah. If you know, you know. But if you haven't experienced it, you just can't recognize how cold you get.
Did you wear a boonie or a cravat around your head like what we see the Saw guys or Rambo guy is doing, or did you just wear your boonie to keep the sun out
No,
of your
I
eyes
was
and
I was
rain?
a boonie boy.
Yeah, yeah. With y'all doing long operations, that the boonie seems like it would be optimal not only for sun and rain, but heck, if you're trying to sleep, pop that baby over your face like a cowboy, and at least it blocks out some light. Uh,
It's a little good for sun, and it's a little good for rain. My brim is helpful.
I like that. Gosh, I hope I'm not forgetting anything. Oh, there is. Well, I'll save that because there's a question about air coordination. Did two questions coming up. Did you you mentioned carrying everything y'all absolutely needed. This entails food. Would y'all have a set time in the morning and in the evening that y'all would eat something? Never cooking with fire. Always eating sea rats or either lerp baggies or what have you.
Uh, Kind of a funny story connected to operations and food. Uh, the Montagnard would gobble all their food early. Uh, there wasn't a lot of food discipline with the yard. Uh, the first mobile guerrilla force, A-100, in late '66, conducted an operation in the Ashnell Valley up north, and it was early monsoon season, and they were out for close to 30 days. And the mountain guards went through their food within the first 4 or 5 days. The weather was so bad they could not resupply them by air. By the time they finally were able to extract them, the Montagnards were eating the bark off trees,
Holy cow. Boy,
literally.
that's when you know you're in bad way when you're having to eat stuff like that. Because imagine if it's monsoon season, ain't no animals out because they'd be able to find them if they could. That. Whew, jeez.
Another funny story about food in the A camps. Uh, the A camps, all the A camps had a lot of rats, and these were large. They were maybe uh, dachshund size or eagle size rat,
Oh,
and uh, I remember one time I had night CQ duty at my A camp A-113 in Shiva, and about I don't know 1 or 2 in the morning, this rat ran across the floor of our team house, and uh, the Montagnards who were with me started chasing it outside in the trenches, and they finally cornered it, killed it, and cooked it.
oh man, what? I mean,
And so in the A camps, rats were delicacies. And I'll tell you another typical story. We were out on a snoop and poop mission, same troops, Geova troops, up north in a bad valley, mountain valley, and we were sneaking along, trying to be as quiet and as sealed as we could be. And I heard this tremendous commotion and noise and stomping and beating behind me in the unit, part of the unit behind me. I ran back there to see what the hell was going on, and the Montagnards had cornered a 4 or 5 foot long snake, and they were beating the crap out of it, trying to kill it so they could eat it, which they did. And so much for snooping and pooping on that operation.
yeah, after beating a snake furiously there in the bush to death, that's definitely throwing away the snoop and poop.
It
um,
it was the Montagnards was funny with food, and it was funny because when I was at PFC in the Orange Forest one summer, we killed a huge timberback rattlesnake. Killed it, ate it.
Lord knows down here in Alabama, as a matter of fact, I saw my first rattlesnake of the year. Uh, gosh, what was it? Friday afternoon, and it was huge. I and
Yeah.
speaking of that, did you have any come across? You just mentioned any snakes, but did you have close calls and the rats? Did y'all see any elephants or any big creatures or any mishaps with tigers or anything?
No, I don't know of anyone in I-4 that did. I know the story of that was a movie that they actually brought airlifted elephants into Trabom that I was telling you. Uh, that movie is true. They actually brought an elephant to court and airlifted it by helicopter into the Da Nang area to help the indigenous population with the timber harvesting.
Wow, if I'm not mistaken, that was used for Operation Dumbo Drop, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
it.
Okay,
It's
that's
actually true.
and there's a photo somewhere around here. There's gonna be a good question about MedCap here in a second. I did have a photo of it. There's literally a great photo of the guys with the two elephants, and I just lost it. There's so many photos, guys, on this iCore Mike Force page that y'all just be on here for days. I was gonna try and find it, but I am completely out of luck. If I find it, I'll put it up. But this was our first question. I had a question and I'm blanking on what it was. There was food, and then it'll come to me in a minute. Jason was curious, what was your first impressions of the customs and cultures of the yards and the nungs that you were working with?
Well, that's a very good question. My first contact was on the Mike Force in Da Nang. So they were, uniformed troops living in our own barracks that they had built, uh, and in a the environment of a military camp, uh, and it was they were very easy to make contact with. They were very easy to uh, uh, work with. They were very cooperative and very positive, had a great sense of humor. They start laughing something funny and laughing at an instant. Uh, that in that setting, they were just like your brothers or something, your little brothers.
Like little kids almost,
Yeah,
kind of.
yeah, exactly. Uh, at the A camps, is a different setup because they're living uh, in a remote area. They, depending on the A camp, they may be living inside the camp with their family if they're married and have one, or their family may be in an adjacent village, depending on whatever the custom is at a given camp. So you get to see them uh, in a much different setting and in a really indigenous uh, lifestyles cycle year in, year out. You see them harvesting the rice during rice harvesting season. You see them planting it during planting season. If they're reasonably well off, you see them with a few water buffalo. You see all these things.
Wow.
It's a
That's
different. You begin to learn and appreciate the different cultures.
absolutely. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, once they accept you, you get in with them, and of course, all the SF men have the Montagnard bracelet. I was lucky enough to be given one that I've got put back for keepsake purposes that I won't ever wear. But I mean, we've heard stories of, I mean, guys when a firefight starts that they have to get the yards off of them because they're laying on top of them, and he's having to get on the radio and work because they're not wanting the American to get hurt in any shape, form, or fashion. I mean, they're utterly devoted to the Americans. As long as you treat them well, they treat you uh, even better.
That was true in my course, and I'm sure with many of the tribes in the two corps is true, but not true at all at Trabant, where they ran off and left the special forces guys, and not true at all with Team A-101.
Absolutely. We're coming up with the questions. I think we're going to end up hitting 2 hours, which I told you I didn't think we were going to do for viewing purposes. But we may have to do a part two and have you back to talk about A-101 a little bit. But I did find the photo. One of two elephants, Bonnie and Clyde, airlifted to Trebong 107 to pull timber to the local sawmill, 1968. Mr. Jim Morris.
Yep, that's it.
That is so cool. And as a matter of fact, we had him on recently, and I need to save that photo. And I don't think we got into that in the actual story, and then Dumbo dropped, but that's outstanding. Um, we do have a few questions remaining, and then two pictures I was very interested. I wanted to ask you about, but Daniel's knocking it out with questions today. How did the Mike Force coordinate with conventional U.S. forces and ARVN forces when you would go out into an AO?
Well, that's a very good question, an important question. I didn't have any of those experiences, but uh, others did. One of my successors, an Australian captain, uh, who came in after I left and was my course team leader and commanding officer of A-113. Took a company out to operate in 101st Airborne, and unfortunately was shot and killed during a night operation, night attack. So those kinds of connections between special forces and more conventional U.S. units and ARVA units did take place, but I can't really comment on how the communications were because I just wasn't involved in any.
Wow. And I've just finished a book about some of the LERP teams laid up in an ambush, and uh, evidently somebody didn't clear out the AO or let people know, and they're laid up, and guys are antsy, claymores are out, they're about to punch the thunder clicker, and next thing you know, they notice how loud they are, and like, this can't be NVA, it's got to be civilian or woodcutters. And next thing you know, they see camo and weapons, and they have to immediately, decompress. And luckily, the team leader, because he was worried grunts are gonna see camoed men that look like NVA laying on the ground and just shoot them. So he lets them pass a little bit out of the ambush zone. And the thank God the team leader is about a 6'4" Georgia guy with a big accent, and stands up and he's like, "Hey boys," and they immediately freak out and thank God don't shoot him right then, but they de-escalate. And I'm always interested about that because guys firing artillery rounds in your AO or running into a conventional unit like that, it can get deadly with people getting antsy.
Oh yeah, you're exactly right. Uh, there was an incident that happened in an A camp while I was in there. Uh, the 101st was at an A camp and conducting operations out of that A camp, and they had an artillery battery set up at the end of the runway that served the camp. Air Force was coming in a caribou to resupply the camp, and uh, apparently it was the firemen called at the same time. That's it. That's Hakan. That's the caribou. The artillery battery shot off the tail of the caribou on final approach. The caribou flipped upside down, and that's actually the district chief's compound, which is adjacent to the special forces compound. A, the crew was killed instantly, uh, and you can see the here's the runway, the end of the runway. There's another caribou on the runway. This is my photo, by the way, and they you can imagine that this particular caribou coming in as that one did, landing, and the artillery battery firing up in this direction, and the momentum simply carried the caribou upside down into this compound.
And I believe on the Mike Force page, there's an even better action shot of it literally happening. I don't think I've got it saved. I had this one because it was your photo. Let me help everybody out and just go ahead and tag to where people can find this page, because Mr. Virgil sent it to me, thank goodness, before we started, and it is fantastic. A lot of the photos are Mr. Virgil's. You can actually type his name in and just see tons of photos. There's some good videos that I'm going to be posting, but yeah, did the pilot survive that, or was that a catastrophic
I think they lost hand. The loadmaster in the back was the story I heard was that his last name was Carter, and he had something like just a few weeks left in country.
Wow, jeez Louise. It's always stuff like short guys that seem to be that now we see why when you get short guys are so trigger shy and jumpy because anything can happen at any given time.
Getting short, scary time.
I can only imagine, especially how long y'all been doing it, and like I said, something can happen at any moment. Um, Nick was curious. We've got a few more. I've seen yard platoon leaders and such, but did they have official ranks inside the Mike Force?
Yes, yeah, they had the typical kinds of ranks that you would see in a U.S. or Aussie infantry unit. There was a company commander, company exec officer, platoon leaders, platoon sergeants, squad leaders, team leaders.
Wow.
There was a chain of command. You have to have a chain of command in order to execute tactics.
Wow. Excellent. Well, I always curious about that as well. We're always used to just hearing about, 1-0s or 0-1s in the SOG parlance or, team members added to deltas or chew hoys or what have you. So that's very interesting. That was a
I
great
would
question,
think,
Nick.
Bud, you can tell me, but I would think even in the smaller 10 or 12 man SOG and Delta teams, there would be I knew there's a 1-0 and a 1-1 on the U.S. The command, second in command, but I would think among the indigenous troops there would be two teams, or there would be a structure that they would have for organization.
Yeah, you're correct. Absolutely. In SOG, I'm not sure how Delta went, but SOG would be the American side would be 1-0 through 1, 2, 3, or 4, however many Americans, and then the inverse on the Indige side. The 0-1 was the team leader. The 0-2 was the second in command, and so forth. So you're absolutely correct. Yes, sir. Absolutely. Um, the last few are great questions. Jason was curious, did you know anything about or did you hear about MACV-SOG and the other special projects while you were in country?
Yes. Uh, 66 and 67 was a time when Delta was still operating. SOG was starting, uh, and I can't quite remember. Billy Greenwood went to Sigma. I don't know anything about Omega or the other Greek letter units, but I do know he went to Sigma, or at least that's what I was told.
Well, Sigma and Omega, the Greek projects technically folded into CCS, so they were that was technically SOG if you want to incorporate everything into it. So he was already into SOG by that time. So yes, sir. It sounds like you definitely heard about it then. Yeah. Did you ever? I mean, you were there for a year, but did you ever come across any guys and think maybe I'll extend and see if I can get into the special projects, or did you feel like your time with the Mike Force was well served and all you needed to do on that side of the things?
Well, the problem with regular Army officers that were field grade officers, lieutenants and captains, uh, the problem they faced that the career path in the Army for regular Army officers at that time was you could only have one branch immaterial assignment.
Mm.
Special Forces at that time was a branch immaterial. It didn't become a branch until the 80s. And so I I tried to get another Special Forces assignment, but the lady in the Pentagon told me what I just told you. And so I served one tour as a senior lieutenant and then as captain. And that's all I know until I became major.
That's so strange to me when we hear it from the NCOs as well, but that there you officers are, and and I know a lot of y'all got bamboozled or ramshackled over into line units because of y'all's experience leading men and them needing people, but it sure seems like it was a dumb thing to do for officers that chose to stay and serve in special force combat units or what have you, combat capacities, that would be the death knell of their career, as opposed to staying in a line unit, an airborne unit, and work your way up. That if you did the special forces route, is almost like your career was going to stall out and be done.
I agree. The policies were what the policies were. It's kind of silly in a way, because reserve officers could continue in SF if they got reappointed reappointed, which reserve officers had to get periodically as reappointed.
Mm-hmm.
But regular Army officers at that time just couldn't do it. It was just the policy was. And in those days, special forces was kind of on the outskirts of the regular Army. Put it that way. We used the abbreviation USF, United States Special Forces, not United States Army Special Forces, not USAAF. Now, since the 80s, it's a brand. Different. It's a very significant part of the regular Army, and there are regular career paths for all ranks. But in those days, that's the way it was.
Yeah, crazy.
And later, Abrams got really pissed. Abrams ultimately kicked the forces out of South Vietnam because of a particular incident that occurred, which we don't need to go into here. But
we've had a few guests on that were there.
Kind of the relationship between the regular Army and SF in those days.
He hated you guys, and I've heard from him visiting some of the SOG bases when guys were being awarded, and one in particular that sticks out, Mr. Rick Hendrick from CCN. He was getting his DSC, and something to the effect, as he was walking off, he's like, "I'll make sure someone in the beret doesn't get another Medal of Honor while I'm general or what have you." I was just like, man, that is terrible.
Yeah, that's a very typical story.
But it is what y'all is. Y'all persevered, and now, everybody's beating down the doors to become Army Special Forces. So, with you being in Vietnam so early in the war, did you serve with any men who were a part of Operation White Star, which was the Laotian campaign to train indigenous warriors, or any other prominent projects were going on before the official war started?
It's a good question. No, not to my knowledge. No of anyone that I served with that was in White Star or any of the other projects. It could have been, but I wasn't aware of it. They didn't tell me.
It was very small. I mean, I shouldn't say very small, but it was a pretty tight, close-knit group with the CIA still involved. And, Dick Meadows, I believe, General Singlaub was there for a period. There were a few SOG men that came in and out, but there weren't all that many. It was a pretty close-knit group.
Right. And it was a hush-hush kind of thing.
Absolutely. We've got two more. This was interesting, and I kind of saved it for the last because I was also curious myself. Air support for the Mike Force. Did your Mike Force have any CH-46 Chinook gunships for fire support? And I'll add on, did y'all have any Spooky or Spectre or Puff the Magic Dragon support?
Not on operations that I was on. I never saw CH-47 or Marines in the 46, CH-46, 47 was Army. I never saw any of those gunships. I don't know if they were around in 66 and 67. They might have been, but I didn't see them and I didn't hear of them. But Puff the Magic was around. I think for a time they might have had a few C-119s that were gunned up. And the C-47s were used. I don't know about the C-130s. I don't have any memory of them at that time.
And we are coming up to yep. Oh, I've got some picture questions and we shall be done. There were I was curious about two photos, and I think this one's yours. There's another where you're in a sampan or a pontoon. Did y'all do much river crossing or using boats of any sort, either sampan or Navy boats on any operations?
No, not at least that I was in or knew about. The only boats that we used were native sampans or boats that we would use to cross the river from a special forces camp to get to a area of operation like this. This is Barry Rust in the background, and that's yours truly in the foreground. The interesting, funny story along those lines. I was out at my A camp, and I word from some of my course studies that the C team in Da Nang had gotten an airboat, and they were using the airboat off the beach in the South China Seas to run around for a while and have a good time. But they eventually sent it back to the train because it was a mistake. It couldn't have gone up to Da Nang.
Wow. How deep are the rivers here that y'all are that y'all are in? Are they pretty dangerous or were they pretty calm and serene here?
What was it? Ask me again.
Oh, the river. It looks pretty deep here. What was it? The current strong? Did y'all have any trouble with anybody falling in or any drownings or
No,
anything? Was it?
no. We managed all right. These were actually native sampans operated by the native, and they were used, for traffic crossing back and forth between the special forces camp and the village of Bateau and the surrounding area. So the boat handlers were, very experienced. And I suppose during the monsoon season, when it was really heavily raining, they would just cease operations for a while. But as long as the water was like this, it's not a problem.
Yeah, I can imagine getting in that sampan during monsoon season would be a no-go. That would be very dangerous.
Yeah.
Let's see here. I think one that was interesting. Let's see. One was H&I mortar photo, but one was you doing a medcap mission. Is this you guys right here shooting the 105 outside of camp?
No, that's in camp. Several of the camps, this is at Bateau, several of the camps in I-4 had 105. They scrounged them from somewhere. And they were very helpful because the range of the 105 was much greater than the 4.2 mortars. The 4.2 mortars typically were the largest indirect fire weapons that A camps had, unless they went out and scrounged a 105. Now, there's a funny story about scrounging. When I was at Giova, A-113, down by the two-corps border, we did not have a 105, and we really wanted one badly because a lot of our operations were well out of range of the camp's 4.2. So, talking about our senior communications engineer, Phil, we sent him in the name ground a 105, and he came back on a C-133, and he said, "Look what I've got! I've got a 105." Well, to make a long story short, It wasn't a 105. It was a Marine Corps 4.2 that they had mounted on the chassis, the wheeled chassis of an old World War II 75 millimeter pack howitzer. So it didn't have any more range than the 4.2 that we had in the camp. But after I left the camp and went up to Lang Vei, they would take the camp, they would take the wheeled 4.2, hitch it to the 3/4 ton truck that we had, and run it down one of the roads to the first burned out bridge, which gave the range another couple thousand meters. And they supported operations doing that. For one day, the VC decided that they would meet them at the bridge, and they had a huge firefight there, and they managed to get the mortar back to camp, and they never went back there again.
Holy cow. That's
So it's interesting stories about scrounging and fire support.
we've heard some wild tales of some guys having to do all they can to get the 81s or the 4 deuces charged to get them out to help the guys. And oh man, that's some crazy stuff.
I don't know of any camp that actually took any of them from the camp out on operations with them. They may have, but they were big and they were heavy, not things you could load around the mountain.
Oh I couldn't. I couldn't imagine lugging that thing around. That'd be next to impossible. Um, there was, gosh, where was that? You were on I think it's a med cap, and it's a great photograph, and I'm not sure if this is some USA. Oh, here it is. Great photo. I'm always, especially since USAID was just shut down, I like showing the good parts of what they did, helping people out.
Yeah, that's a med cap. There's a whole string of photos there. They're actually pouring cooking oil into containers to give to the local indigenous folks. Here's one of the local indigenous, and we're pouring this is cooking oil. That apparently, I don't know why the USA sends out shipments of different kinds of USA cooking things, things like that, and never requested, and they just show up one day. And so you figure out how we're going to use, what we're going to do with these things. And so once every couple of weeks, we'd run med caps and these supply things out, and that's what this is. Local CIDG standing around, and here's a local, looks like a young girl, and old village elder, and distributing cooking oil to help them.
Wow, that's got to be rewarding, helping out the indige, the village folks like that. Not just all combat with the special forces.
Well, that's the civic action side of what the A-camp did. A-camp really had a couple of different missions. One is combat ops, and the other was civic action ops.
Oh, that was the USAID oil. I think I had one more of. Let's see.
Wish you had the photo of the chicken dive.
Yeah, there's another one right there. Yeah, oh, wow, you've got several of your yard bracelets on. Wow, 1, 2, 3. It looks like you've got 2 or 3 on. Wow.
Yeah, that's the cooking oil.
Wow. Did I have the other USA? No, it does not look like I did. There was one more question about where were you located here? This is up in the mountaintops, and another good way to point out the terrain y'all are dealing with. This looks like a rough and rugged place.
Oh, let's see. That's Trebon.
Oh.
And we come back from looking for the 2 lost special forces group, and we're waiting for transport back to Da Nang. So I'm running around in black pajamas, or at least black pajama top. That's I think that's their top. And on top of that, they put a couple of observation posts on top of their top. But you see the mountains around the camp.
Oh, got the water truck right there, and the power wagon. The CCS guys put a minigun in their power wagon. Hell on wheels with that thing. And I think there was. This is I'm Hondan. You and I'm not sure who that is with you, Mr. Barry or.
Well, that's very rough. That's the village of Atto. When we come over on the boat, we decided we wanted to look around the village. The one thing that happened when we deployed from the village at 0:30 in the morning to go up the mountain and look for that NVA regional headquarters, as we had to walk through this village to get up to the mountains, the church bell started ringing, and it rang one time for every soldier in our unit, which was hardly a coincidence.
Yeah.
So after we got back, Barry and I decided we're going to go over to the village and we're going to just walk around and see if we can see it. And you can tell what the monsoon season has done by the dirt road that's now a mud pie.
Boy, that's bad news. The bell ringing for each man on the patrol. And boy, that's nasty weather right there. I mean, that puts monsoon season in perspective right there. Just soaked and nothing you can do about it. Every day, same time, every day.
If you find that picture of that 105 howitzer being fired and look at and that's inside the camp, you'll see what the monsoon does to the camp.
Oh, and I think here is our last photo. There was one of you at the PX, but I believe this is when you're ready to go home. No longer a short timer.
Right. De-roasting Da Nang. I'm getting ready. Very good friend of mine was the CEO of the Mobile Gorilla Company, and myself. We were de-roasting at the same time. We going back to Da Nang, flying back to let's see, where we stopped in Midway, and then we went back to California. We de-roast and said goodbye in the San Francisco airport bar.
Wow, yeah, that's a happy man right there.
D-road.
Jeez Louise. So what's that like? Do you literally on your short time calendar the day it happens, or are you just waiting for a bird to come pick you up, or are you tasked yourself getting your orders and going to Cameron or Saigon to get on a plane?
Well, we're actually waiting for a scheduled plane and getting on it with 150 other soldiers, airmen, Navy personnel. And this particular plane is going to
Seattle.
Where's fifth group? Going to fifth group, and we started for Kunis from there. Didn't go back to Saigon.
Wow. Was that a sea bag you had? One of the viewers was asking.
Duffel bag.
Yeah.
Same
Navy term. That's jarhead speak. That's what my dad always called them, sea bags. We didn't get to cover A-101's history, and if you'd be open to it one day, I mean, it wouldn't be a 2-hour show like we did here today. We're actually over 2 hours, but we'd love to hear about the history of Lang Vei if you'd be open one day to coming back and sharing with us.
Well, it's an interesting history, Bud, and I'd be glad to come back at some point. And you can reschedule me in your schedule of activities and talk about Lang Vei because it's the whole history of SF up along the DMZ from Quezon. Quezon was originally SF camp,
Mhm.
and the Marines took over Quezon and enlarged, and the SF moved to the first Lang Vei camp. So there's a very interesting uh, history and historical study of that whole event. So I'd be happy to talk about it and share some experiences, maybe learn from some of your other folks that be maybe on uh, conference, and we could explore that a little bit.
That would, and I've got a map here. I didn't realize how close CCN, the Quezon SOG base here was. There's the
Actually,
Marine.
actually, CCN was in the Quezon combat base, but they wouldn't let them inside the inner perimeter. The Marines made them create their own camp adjacent to their outer wire. That
That's I've seen footage, and it is
whole
just
story about the Marines.
tiny little area there. But yes, sir, we absolutely maybe we're here at the end of the month, maybe the first or second week of May, we can have you on if your schedule permits, and we'd love to hear that. We're all about learning more history. So
All right. Well, thank you so much for letting me on and having me on, and I enjoyed talking with you. I'm
yeah,
happy to share what little I know whenever you have time to make it available.
yes, sir. It's been absolutely fantastic. Like I said, you're one of our first full-on Mike Force vets that's been able to share with us, and already getting a bunch of thank yous, and can't wait for you to come back messages. So I will close it out for today, and I'll go ahead and key your name in for May, and we'll get ready and set up for a Lang Vei history lesson. So guys, I hope y'all had a good day watching and learning as well as I did, and we want to thank Mr. Virgil for joining us, and we hope you have a good rest of your day, and I'll be in touch with you, sir.
Thank you, bud. Enjoyed it.
Yes, sir.